Look at that fancy new graphic. All right. We're here. It's modern. It's Nerd Rage. We're going to be here all day long. Hopefully you'll stick with us. I'm Joe Lossett. We are Nerd Rage Gaming, and today we're going to be playing 7 rounds of Modern. Players are contesting for $2,000 in prizes. We have a series of commentators. We got an awesome metagame. We got March Madness metagame breakdown. We got all kinds of stuff going on today. We got Beky Bell up first. Let's bring her in.
Hello.
Here she is. All right. Good morning.
Good morning to you as well.
So we're here. We're here for Modern, and we have, unlike sometimes when we've had events recently, this time we have a best deck.
Mm-hmm.
People that are paying attention know that green-white Heliod is the deck to be in the field. So my question to you, just to kick things off today, is for yourself personally, do you like it when there's a best deck, or would you prefer there's kind of 3 or 4 decks on that are tier 1, but it's not really clear which one is the one you really should be targeting?
I think I have I have 2 answers because I feel it differently based on the format for this event.
Okay.
Or for any event in general, I suppose. Typically in Modern, I like when there is a best deck, because then I can either choose the deck to beat the best deck or I can play the best deck. And I like that choice in a format that has so many cards and is so extremely open. I feel like the duality of that is very helpful in such a large format. And something like Standard, I like when there's a lot of variety and a lot of different decks, and I'm not really stuck playing the best deck, because in Standard, if there is a best deck, the ways to combat the best deck is a lot harder because it's a lot smaller of a format. So for the sake of this event and Modern, if I was going to be playing in this event, I would probably choose either playing the best deck, or I would probably choose something that I feel is very strong against the best deck.
Okay, that's fair. That's not something I had considered thinking about this, is that certainly for a significant portion of players, they would prefer there is a best deck so that they can play it. Whereas, yeah, for me, I think I'm often not going to just jump to playing the best deck, but obviously I'll certainly keep it in mind while I'm building for it. But I think I would rather, and I remember went back, quite some time ago when the structures were, competitive play was a little different, and there was PTQs, multiple times a month that you could drive to. And I remember one of my friends that I played with all the time he would always prefer that there was only like a couple really good decks, and you can play one and just practice against the other one. And I never really felt that way. I felt like I would rather there's an unconfined metagame space where there's half a dozen decks that are on top, or I mean honestly at that point in time, even if there was a defined metagame, we probably wouldn't have known what it was. And so you can practice just in general. You don't have to practice against specific things. And because I think just for myself, I prefer my practicing to be, against random opponents, not against targeted play against the same matchup over and over again. That may not be the best way to do it, but that's generally what I have done.
It also depends on the type of event that you're planning for. If you're planning for something like a GP, sometimes you have to practice against a lot of random decks, because the first couple rounds of a GP are going to likely be against random decks. You're not always expecting to go into an event like a Grand Prix and be like, oh, I'm going to play against the best deck after the best deck after the best deck. There's going to be somebody who just brought Merfolk because they've just been playing Merfolk and it's the deck that they have since the dawn of time.
Right.
So you kind of have to take that into consideration. Also, is what type of event are you planning for? The same thing kind of with a PPTQ or a PTQ. There's going to be some amount of people in early rounds and maybe even in late rounds who are just really good with this certain deck that they've been playing for forever. And you have to be prepared to play against some of these really niche decks that have been cluttered. They're at the bottom of your desk under a million other papers, and you're just like, oh, right, this exists.
Yeah, so it sounds like we don't want to, we feel we've answered this. If you have thoughts on the chat, go ahead and put them in. Beky and I aren't going to ourselves see them, but we do kind of go back and review things later on. But that's enough from us. We're going to have round 1 getting ready to go. So if we have deck lists ready, looks like we're going to have Gabriel Nicholas against Carolyn Kavanagh, sometime commentator on this channel. Gabriel Nicholas playing green-white Heliod, as we've talked about, the noted best deck of the format at the moment. Seems to have answers to a lot of things, including sometimes, you can come into a format, oh, there's some fancy control deck, combo deck, and you're just like, I'll play red, I'll just kill them real quickly. Well, Green-White Heliod comes packed with a lot of life gain, including main deck Auriok champions, so good luck with that plan.
Yeah, that's a card that we've seen spike in price pretty recently, so kind of insane to see all of these cards. I've always been a fan of a deck that plays Walking Ballista. I've really kind of adored that card ever since it was printed, but I like seeing some like cards that we haven't seen in a really long time being in this deck, things like Spike Feeder. I don't even know what Wheel of the Sun and the Moon is before this deck even existed, so I think it's really cool to see a deck like this kind of rise to be the best deck, and now we're just at the point where it's a point in a format where a best deck, when it rises up, you kind of have to see, okay, is it the best deck because a lot of the other popular decks that people like to play just like aren't good against it? Or is it actually oppressive? Is it actually so good that like nobody can combat it? So we're kind of at that like pivotal point in a format where we're watching, is this going to be the best deck for a while to the point where something possibly needs to get banned? Or will we slowly figure out, okay, we just need to be playing these things in our sideboards and go from there?
Right. Well, in this case, I think this deck is certainly beatable. And one deck that happens to have a pretty good matchup against it is what we're going to test Gabriel with in the first round. Carolyn Kavanagh playing mono green Tron. And yeah, Tron has a fairly good matchup here. It's not like an auto win, but one aspect of the Heliod deck is that even if it can't kill you with a ballista or in combat right away, it has the option of gaining infinite life, or at least the capability. And Tron doesn't really care about that.
Yeah, it's cool when one of your cards says you restart the game. And so even if as long as your opponent doesn't kill you, you have an out into a lot of really strange situations that don't come up in Magic a whole lot.
Right. Yeah, and we have sweeper removal, we have exiling, which can matter. But importantly, we have, like we talked about, we have the ability to beat infinite life by restarting the game or by decking with Ulamog. So we kind of have two ways to get around what's supposed to be kind of one of the defensive stalwarts of the Heliod deck. So Caroline's deck in particular here has a couple Thragtusk main deck, which we don't always see. Certainly useful in some things, not necessarily here, but
and we got some sick new transitions. Sorry, I'm cutting you off, but I'm just really excited by the transitions.
We do, and if we can now transition into the match, that would be even better. But yes, we do. We got we had Nerd Rage Gaming always on the ball. We had that stuff ready to go last month and forgot to put it into the system. But it's all set up today. Can we production get to there we go, and we're in, and it looks like we missed the first turn, but that's no problem.
Yeah, I think we can catch up pretty well.
I think we can. We had Arbor Elf leading off for Gabriel Nicholas, followed by Utopia Sprawl, which is the way to cheat on mana by 2 levels. We actually have 4 mana on turn 2, since the Arbor Elf can untap the forest enchanted by Utopia Sprawl. Importantly, one of the important things for Tron is to check how many mulligans the player took, and Caroline looks like she took 1, which is a reasonably good sign, I would say, for Tron in general. If you're starting with 6 or more cards, you probably are in pretty good shape.
Yeah, it means you likely saw some things that you liked, maybe have a little overflow of things. Hopefully it means that we've got Tron pretty easily, though it might be put at a little bit of a stumble by the Skyclave Apparition taking this chromatic sphere from Caroline's side of the board. That's quite an explosive start from this deck on the side of Oink Mage here.
Yeah, this is a ton of permanents on the board already, and Caroline, losing the chromatic, significant because if she has Ancient Stirrings, she has the other chromatic to not really be tripped up. But if her plan was Sylvan Scrying, then her Tron has been delayed for a turn, which definitely matters. Although Gabriel, somewhat disruptive start and a lot of mana generation, but this isn't the most threatening board ever. So
yeah, if we continue to draw blanks on Gabriel's side, this could end up being a little bit disastrous, especially if Caroline is about to just hit draw and has 5 cards in hand. You're at the point where you got to worry what those 5 cards are.
Yeah, so even if we see scrying into tower and then pass, we're a few turns away from lethal damage without getting help off the top for Gabriel. So we do see scrying here, probably getting the tower. Maybe there's some world where she chooses to get a blast zone here, but it is tower. And if this is an Oblivion Stone, okay, it's not, because that would have been really unfortunate for Gabriel. Although I suppose if it was an Oblivion Stone, she may not have played it anyway, not wanting to leave it vulnerable to another Skyclave apparition.
Yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense, but we do Ancient Stirrings into getting an Ugin into our hand, and this is one of the things we were afraid of for Gabriel, is drawing something that is technically a blank in this spot and just like isn't going to be able to combat. We know that an Ugin is likely to come down right now.
Oh, yeah, Carolyn's got the business. She's got the Ugin, she's got the Sanctum of Ugin to tutor up whatever she pleases, Ballista or Ulamog, and the choice is Walking Ballista, but honestly the choice may not matter, as Gabriel is probably not beating the Ugin by itself.
Yeah, the amount of times I've had people scoop to me playing an Ugin and destroying this many permanents is pretty high, so this seems like it would probably be, yep, all right.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's really unclear here whether Gabriel conceded to the Ugin or the 1/1 token that was generated from the Skyclave apparition dying, because, you know, that's pretty scary, too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all of a sudden you have no board and your opponent has a 1/1.
Yeah.
It's got to be a little bit spooky.
Yeah, I mean, 7 for 1 on top of getting a 1/1, that's bad news. So Gabriel takes down game 1 of our tournament. I'm sorry, Caroline takes down Gabriel in game 1 of our tournament with Mono Green Tron beating Green White Heliod, which is not a surprising result, but not obviously what Gabriel's hoping for. Now, if we have Gabriel's deck list, let's see. What does he have to combat the Tron Menace? We see 2 Damping Spheres, and really Damping Sphere is excellent against Tron. There's no denying that. We've both played a lot of Tron. We're both, I'm sure, familiar with how unpleasant Damping Sphere can be to play against.
It's really annoying. Most of the time, it's not like the end-all be-all. Like, we have quite a few ways to get it off the board, and sometimes we just like tap the normal amount of mana to handle it, but it is certainly a stumbling block. Blood Moon feels a similar way. Maybe it's just like you and I have both played Tron for a long enough time, you much longer than me. So it's kind of feeling like at some point it's just like a stumbling block, though, if you're possibly new to the deck, though we know Caroline is not new with Tron either. It could potentially be a lot of a bigger ordeal or difficult to deal with, but let's take a look at Caroline's deck and see what she has. I imagine that these dismembers are coming in depending on if we are worried about those dampening spheres, potentially some of these Nature's Claims. Nature's Claims also, worst case scenario, can take out some Utopia Sprawls, gain us, or possibly gain us some life if that is the situation. But I can't imagine, maybe the Wormcoil Engine comes in, but I imagine that it's mostly going to be the dismembers for sure coming in, and possibly some amount of Nature's Claims.
Yeah, I actually feel like she's got quite a bit here. 3 is certainly the upper end of the range of removal spells that Tron would carry, in addition to having 2 Ballista's main deck and only 2 Wormcoil Engines. So whether she was intentionally targeting this deck or not, this is, out of the possible Tron builds that you could be playing right now, this one is, I would say, more heavily slanted towards being good against Heliod than other possible options. More so than the one I'm currently playing. Yeah, because only 2 Wormcoils, that's nice. One other notable thing as we head into game 2 is that Gabriel, with his 2 Damping Spheres, that's great. We talked about Damping Sphere being good against Tron. That's all that Gabriel has. He doesn't have really anything else. And
this hand just feels like it isn't good enough. We saw the like really explosive great hand not be good enough. This hand feels kind of mopey, though maybe you're looking for a mopier hand to just be reactive to Tron. I've played a matchup similar to this. The Heliod deck has been around for quite some time. Haven't played against Green White Heliod a ton. It hasn't been like one of the most popular decks. It was playing Green White for a little while, a year and a half ago or so, but it's interesting to see its evolution and wonder how I would attack it playing against it now if I was on the side of Tron.
So Gabriel here on 6. Caroline follows to 6. And then we have Gabriel going again to 5, and this is one of those frustrating things where I believe the 6 and the 5 are identical, just with one less land, but that's what you're left with. I may have mistaken that as they were flipping through, but here we are. Mulling the opening hand, I agree, was too slow. Company's nice because you can, you have a few turns to develop as Tron tries to assemble itself. And then, especially if you can come in, like, even if there's something like an Ugin, you can still company end of turn and potentially draw and then put something together. But with as few resources as we have here, Gabriel's going to need to just hit something and be off. As Carolyn kept 6 again, and like we said for the previous game, 6 is kind of enough in Tron. This is a deck that mulligans really well.
It is a little awkward on the side of Tron, typically, to start with a forest, but we see the forest leading Caroline into a Nature's Claim to take out the Utopia Sprawl, which is one of the things that we kind of discussed when looking at their sideboards as a potential play. We imagined it was likely for something like Damping Sphere, possibly even these Walking Ballistas, but the Utopia Sprawl certainly slowing down the speed with which the Heliod deck can run.
So Caroline doesn't break the chromatic first, which would lead me to believe that there's either another tutor or the other Tron line in hand, and we do see the other tutor in the map. So this turn, a Sky's Evaporation would have been significant, being able to pick off the map. But instead we see the Heliod come down. Now we have some business. Gabriel is actually going to be significantly hurt by losing that Utopia Sprawl to the Nature's Claim. Assuming he doesn't just get wiped off the map this turn.
Yeah, we'll see here. That looks like a lot of mana to be tapped, though, so this could be a little spooky, and Karn Liberated is the big spook that is coming onto the battlefield right now. All right, not the worst. We have another Heliod in hand, so we're still technically in this game with the potential for some big plays on Gabriel's side.
We needed to land there, though. This Utopia Sprawl is often, it's a mana-generating card, but it is not the same as a land. Karn gets cleaned up, so if there's not another one, then Gabriel's in business. Let's see, what do we have potential here for? Even if it's unlikely Caroline would go for a Blast Zone just to kill Utopia Sprawl, even though it would actually, if she could see his hand, she probably would choose to do that.
Yeah. All right. Gabriel setting an upkeep stop on Caroline's turn to activate, sacrificing the Ranger of Eos to say that she cannot cast non-creature spells this turn.
Yeah, that certainly saves from a repeat performance by Karn or Karn's brother Karn, cousin Ugin, all the mean planeswalkers out of the powerful Tron deck, which has its mana up and running. Now you see here we're watching from Gabriel's point of view. That's the way we do things at Nerd Rage Gaming. If you're new to our coverage, it's we reserve our events through forced perspective, so that you can put yourself in the seat of one of the players and really kind of play along with them and see what information they have available to them. As we see here, as Gabriel takes a look at Caroline's deck list, we are also playing with open deck lists today, utilizing MTG Melee. So players do know the 75s their opponents brought when they sit down to play.
Do you prefer to play tournaments with open deck lists, or do you prefer closed deck lists?
I think I'm old school enough. I played the super majority of the tournaments I've played in were without open deck lists. And so that's kind of still feels what's normal to me. I've gotten used to this new updated way of doing things now, where for Pro Tours and whatever else, we do have access to everything, and I'm okay with it. But I'm not. I wouldn't say I prefer it this way. For very big important events like a Pro Tour, I'm fine with it. But for smaller events, or more regional events, I think closed deck list is fine with me.
I'm agreeing with that. All right, let's do a little recap of what just happened. So
Yeah.
Caroline was able to spend the turn where she could not cast non-creature spells to play this Worm Coil Engine. Thankfully, had a creature in hand, and also used the cracking of the expedition map to get a Ghost Quarter to take care of the Utopia Sprawled Forest that Gabriel had, which is a great way to have spent that turn.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully we've got a little bit of gas to follow this up to. An Oblivion Stone, a good way to handle any other pesky things that could be coming down on Gabriel's side of the board.
Yeah, so now the company is enabled, but what
But at what cost?
Yeah, so this is a case where this is a scenario where Tron being able to dodge the infinite life comes in handy, because I don't believe that Gabriel can come up with an instant speed kill without actually casting the ballista first. So, for example, off of the company. He can potentially gain infinite life off the company, but that's not going to actually help win the game.
Mm-hmm.
Damping Sphere is...
This feels like a rough draw at this point in the game.
Yeah, Damping Sphere actually is worth something. It is answered by the Oblivion Stone. I'm a little surprised we saw nothing there.
I believe that the point is mostly just to try and Coco on perhaps Caroline's end step.
Yeah.
Or now.
Sure, we're going to do now. Okay. Okay, because we can hit Skyclave Apparition. Oh, and we sure don't.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
Going for Skyclave Apparition was a great idea. That was one of the more unfortunate reveals off of Collected Company, getting us only an Arbor Elf.
Yeah, at the least we could have gained an irrelevant 100 life points, but instead we got a mana source. Which is not going to pressure Caroline into blowing the Oblivion Stone prematurely, as the Worm Coil Engine is more than up to the task of handling the board at the moment. Ancient Stirrings, powerful. Impulse for 5. Find the most appropriate card for the moment. You're probably going to choose something. Karn the Great Creator.
Karn the Great Creator is appropriate for almost any moment.
Yeah, Karn the Great Creator is awesome. Shuts down the ballista kill condition, allows a Dismember to kill the Damping Sphere. This is just, this is great. And again, I think it's fairly obvious, but we'll repeat it. Gabriel's behind on the board already.
He had a sliver of a chance to get back onto the board with the Collected Company, and it just went in a really unfortunate manner.
Yeah, and then if you needed any confirmation, Beky Bell, a liar.
What?
Gabriel did not have a chance to give... Well, okay. I don't think we can charitably say that that he was going to get back to the game on that company. Maybe we could say that.
I like to have some positivity. Maybe there's something that he knows about the matchup.
No, you take a dump on Merfolk on the intro to the round, but you're positive. Sure. Okay.
I didn't make a dump on Merfolk. It just hasn't been the most popular deck for a really long time.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no dumping when I'm stating facts.
I see. All right. Well, here's a fact. Gabriel got trounced. Carolyn Kavanagh takes down round 1 out of 7 here at Nerd Rage Gaming. Good for her. Sometime commentator she's playing today. She really didn't have too much trouble there.
But we kind of thought that was going to happen. We have played matchups very similar to this, extremely similar to this in the past, and know that Tron doesn't struggle as much as some other decks against the multiple combos that are in the Heliod deck. Mm-hmm. So kind of unfortunate that Gabriel had to play against one of the more difficult matchups so early on, but is playing the best deck, so has the potential to get some wins out under them in the next rounds.
Sure. So one way to look at decks that I never would have considered before, something we have prepared for our audience today, is looking at how many cards in your deck potentially could be banned or would be discussed being banned, and that maybe represents how strong your deck might be. Is anything in the company deck worthy of being banned? I don't know. But in the Tron deck, there's like 20% of the player base that thinks Urza's Tower should be banned. So,
and I like that Tower's the pick. I like that everyone
it's
thinks
the
that it
best
should be
one. It makes the
specifically
most
Tower.
mana.
That's true.
Yeah.
But like, so by that same like thought process, like people don't like that we can get 7 mana on turn 3.
Right.
Okay. But then we watch the green-white Heliod deck with basically the same number of spells was able to get about the same amount of mana on turn 2.
Yeah, that's true.
Could have been the same amount of mana as Tron on turn 3.
Yeah.
So what makes Tron so broken? The green-white Heliod deck is doing it as well.
I'm with you. I don't know.
I gotta defend us a little bit here.
Right.
So
so anyway, so it is March, and for college basketball fans, it is March Madness, which is the big elimination tournament that runs every year, except for last year. And so we have a couple brackets, smaller brackets, as those brackets are gigantic with 64 teams. Our brackets are smaller, but we have brackets prepared for today. We have 2 separate ones, one for the morning, one for the afternoon, of 8 decks, historical decks from Modern that are unreasonable or dominant or in one way or another. And so we're going to go ahead and take a look at our morning bracket here with Beky, and there are links to the deck lists that that you can look at for yourself, and we are going to pop them up one at a time as we move through them throughout the day, but you can also look at them yourself. If production would give me the link now, then I will tell you what it is. Oh, okay, actually we have a shortcut in chat. If you put !madness in chat, then you can pop up the deck lists or find a link to them for yourself. But in the meantime, we have our morning bracket consists of Colorless Eldrazi, Jeskai Control, Hogak versus Affinity, Mono Green Tron versus Jund Death Shadow, and 4-color Urza versus Jund. And these decks are taken throughout the history of Modern, which is 10 years old now, believe it or not. And so there are some rather unreasonable decks in this group. There are a number of cards that are no longer legal in the format. And so these decks are the reasons why some of these cards are no longer legal. Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead, Beky, and take a look at our first matchup, Colorless Eldrazi versus Jeskai Control. So
I feel like this might be the most like 50-50 matchup that we're presenting.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it's kind of hard until you look at the deck lists for yourself. It's kind of hard to say who's actually going to be ahead, because it's hard to, like, for myself, if you tell me, well, Colorless Eldrazi has been around for quite a while now, and I'm not going to immediately jump to the specific version of the deck that might be represented in this event. We are using Shuhei Nakamura's version from Pro Tour Oath of the Gatewatch, and you can see...
Oh, and we even have Ayavugan in here. Whew.
Oh, of course, yeah. We're not playing fair. And thanks to Max Kahn for assembling these groupings of data and facts that go along with them. You can read that for yourself if you're watching along. But yeah, as Beky points out, Ayavugan is really what pushed this, because the bulk of this deck is still playable now, today.
And is played. Well,
less so this month than, say, last month, because now Simian Spirit Guide is also not allowed. So we have
that they banned that card.
2 sets of acceleration in this deck that are no longer legal in the format. But at the time, this deck was a menace. It put up a very strong finish at the Pro Tour. There are actually multiple versions of Madness. Of Eldrazi at the time. And so this deck obviously can put a lot of pressure on. Huge bodies coming out way ahead of where it feels like they ought to on the curve. And then Mutavaults and Ghost Quarters, like, the mana base is pretty useful. However, Shuhei's hypothetically playing against, I believe, the Jeskai Control, which I believe Sean McLaren played in the World Championship 5th place 7 years ago. And we see a deck that, like, okay, yeah, this deck's got a lot of good cards, and Sean McLaren had multiple good finishes with this deck. And we do have banned cards in this deck also. We have Dig Through Time. But
well, we were playing very notably Chalice of the Void in the Eldrazi deck.
Right.
And I feel like that is one of the best ways that the colorless Eldrazi deck gets to combat a lot of the combo or a lot of the control decks. Is you're just able to be like, okay, what's a number that I can't deal with or that would make it really difficult for me to deal with right now, and just going ahead and throwing a Chalice of the Void on that number and saying, okay, now you got to deal with that, and I'm just going to keep attacking you with my big beat sticks in the form of noodle monsters from outer space.
All right. Yes, indeed. Yeah. And something that kind of surprised me looking at this list, there's only 2 Cryptic commands.
Mm-hmm.
This obviously was a time when the format was fairly infested with fast creature decks, as there's a lot of spot removal and not so much for the longer, slower, control mirrors. I mean, Day Through Time is super powerful, but yeah, Cryptic Command is super powerful too, and we're not playing a whole set of them. And in this particular matchup, we have a lot of removal, like you're saying. One, Chalice locks out a lot of the removal, but second, a lot of this removal doesn't kill the Eldrazi creatures. They're too big.
Yeah, exactly. And we're playing only one Supreme Verdict, and we're playing Snapcaster Mages to flashback things like Supreme Verdict, but we would really... I imagine that the Eldrazi deck would take down game 1 super easily, and then it's going to come down to sideboard games. So we're going to look at the sideboards, and there's Wrath of God, Anger of the Gods, but Anger of the Gods also doesn't clear up a lot of the Eldrazi.
Yeah.
Things like Stony Silence maybe help you a little bit, but I feel like at the end of the day, the Eldrazi just would kind of handle this deck no problem.
Yeah, I mean, Wall of Omens. You're supposed to block the big creatures. But you're supposed to survive the block. You're supposed to block Wild Necromble every single turn, not just chump a Reality Smasher and take one in the process. Yeah, no good.
Not to mention that Thought-Knot Seer is one of the best cards that both Tron and Eldrazi Tron and colorless Eldrazi decks have against these control decks. And we're just throwing it in the main board.
Yeah. This is okay. We can head back to the bracket, and I think we'll probably move on for now, but we'll return here throughout the day. But as for the first match, I think we're agreeing colorless Eldrazi is going to take this one down.
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting towards the end of round 1. Let's go ahead and bring up where we're at in the round. If you have some particular player you're interested in following the results of, maybe they're showing here, but this is where things are at the moment. So as you see, some matches, Richard Neal versus Ashiok Nightmare, for example, is still playing, but we see results from the matches that are completed already. We do see some noteworthy names in the field. Sam Pardee is playing. That's awesome. Still playing against Lewis Kaplan. That's a matchup of Titans in the first round. We see actually several Tron decks, at least in this grouping, which makes sense if people were out to try and defeat the green-white Heliod menace.
I imagine that Selesnya Heliod and Selesnya combo are the same thing. Most people have it named Selesnya Heliod, but I saw one named combo, so I imagine that they're just the same deck for the most part.
I imagine you are right about that. But anyway, this gives you a sampling of what we've got in the field today. We have something in the range of 70 players, I believe. We have 70 players exactly.
Awesome.
Today. So you can see kind of what some of the players brought and how their first rounds are shaping up. So that is going to conclude round 1 of coverage. We've got 7 rounds of Swiss plus the top 8 today. Beky's going to be here for the next, all the way through round 4, I believe. So stick around, and we'll be back after the break.